This is according to John Kay. Today I'm going to be talking about a mobility credit of £3,000 in the United Kingdom for trading in your car that has an internal combustion engine for an electric car. So this right here is about them stopping production of cars with internal combustion gas engines. And the reason why they're doing this is because they've already passed a law in their legislature to do this. And £3,000 is roughly $4,050 in US dollars. So there's been pushback from residents in the United Kingdom, presumably people from both cities and rural areas. In the rural areas, they don't have a lot of buses, they don't have a lot of cabs or Ubers or anything like that. You might be stuck riding an e-bike or getting a ride from a friend that has an electric car. So there's been a lot of dissent in rural communities over this issue. So that's one issue right there. And in terms of cars that are electric, there's been some protests, there's been some concerns from people, on the environmental side of things about the possibility of lithium batteries polluting the environment when they supposedly have to be recycled. And there's been talk about how lithium in cell phones and smart TVs and other things that use microchips, how that could be affecting things for the environment. So also, this is coming to the U.S. because Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, he released an executive order by 2035 that the sale of internal combustion vehicles will happen no more in California. So they might do something similar like giving you a mobility credit. Now, I don't know how much that's going to be, but I will say this. If you do something like this, I suspect that people will be moving away from rural areas to large cities because it's going to make a lot of sense to do that to sustain a living. And the price of rent in a lot of metropolitan areas is higher than that in rural areas. So you're looking at how far your buying dollar is going to go. Now, there's been 73 cars that have been crushed to date in the United Kingdom over the mobility credit. So it's not been very popular, or a lot of people just haven't heard about it. As for California and Governor Newsom, the legislature in California, they have suggested to push this resolution, this executive order that was passed, towards 2030 instead, making it 5 years earlier for this to happen. And California already has a difficult economy. The price of living in California is already higher than a lot of states, in the South. I'm sure it's higher than some of the states in the North and the Midwest. In general, it's just higher than a lot of states. It's not sustainable. And you also see a lot of people in California moving to Texas for the cost of living. Now, I went to a seminar called Agenda 21 in the North Georgia mountains in about 2017 in Blairsville, Georgia. And I attended this seminar, and sure, some of you are going to say, this is crazy conspiracy theory stuff, John. And, a lot of it hasn't exactly happened yet. How do we know if it's ever going to become true? Well, there have been communities about planning sustainability and creating biking trails, offering electronic bikes, maybe encouraging those kind of businesses to show up. More, they got public transit and Uber and cabs, and there's just not a lot of that in rural areas. So there have been outlines for cities to where you don't have to drive as much. I mean, New York's been that way. You can get on a bus, or you can get on a subway, or you can get a cab. You don't even have to own a car. But owning a car is a big part of your freedom. It's a big part of being free to move freely wherever you want to go. And relying on scheduling a car or a cab isn't easy for some people. It's not an easy thing to adjust to. I remember riding a shuttle to class when I went to Milledgeville, Georgia for college a long time ago. And I just didn't adjust to it. And sure, I was a naive country boy without a lot of sense about relying on others for transportation. But I will say this. This is just not a good move for flexibility here. And, we can get into things like self-driving cars. And when it comes to that, there's been research about it, and a lot of people who are suggesting selling them are saying they're safe. But we also have to consider concerns about car hacking, which, might sound like a conspiracy theory to some, but there was an article in Wired magazine where they did a test where they hacked an SUV and they drove it off the course of the road. And that's what the editors did there. So you can still hack a car. I'm sure it's hard to do, and you have to know what you're doing, but it has happened. And, in terms of self-driving, I'm not comfortable with that choice. I'm just not. We've drone around and seen traffic lights sometimes with their signals not working correctly, where you only see a flashing yellow arrow. And in a lot of busier areas, it's hard to make that turn. But then again, I'm somebody who drives in a small town. I don't see a lot of that. It could be easier for somebody who lives in a larger city than me. So when it comes to developments of places where you can walk, where you can ride an e-bike or a scooter on the sidewalk, possibly, that right there is something that works easier in a larger city. And if this is actually something that happens and gets implemented under maybe something like a Green New Deal, who knows? But I feel like these changes might be taking longer than predicted, because a lot of times when there's plans, they take longer than predicted. So I'm going to almost end with that. And any questions, comments, concerns, just write them down in the comments. I'll read them. But, there is a lot of skepticism, and it's very understandable why. In this conference I attended, maybe some of it was baseless. But you got to understand that when you have laws that affect the free market, it can greatly hurt somebody. And I know people talk about the environment and carbon emissions and global warming. Well, the studies on lithium batteries being dug up from the ground, digging up lithium to make batteries, there's been a lot of environmental concerns about that too. I've also heard that they might make some cars running off hydrogen. Anyway, I'm going to place some links down below about some of these stories that I've read. So, click, follow me, subscribe, whatever you want to do. Anything helps. Thank you.